Well, hey, I like being called, me and the comrades. I thought that was pretty fun. It's just, I feel like we're all friends here. Well, at least, I guess me and Veteran are. So you and I can talk about it. But aside from that, though, let's get into this game, which I think, Iso, a lot of us weren't expecting this outcome, but it's a lot closer than it seemed.
Yeah, I think there was some intelligent drafting going on from Ginger Turmeric with the early GP pick to maybe throw them off and think it's top lane, more of a standard game, and then they hit him with a Zac top and the GP mid. Shrimps is obviously very comfortable on the gangplank. He had a solo kill or two in there, and Moose Hater just sort of chilling in the top lane on the Zac, playing for the scaling pick.
Yeah, because I know we were talking a lot about the volatility that could be present there within top sides, especially when giving Draco the chance to just absolutely dominate. But, with not on a ton of signature champions and having me forced in the Gnar with the Zac, where you can't really force him out of the lane. He kind of just chills the entire time. He sustains and survives. And better than I find that as the game going on, it was truly survival of the fittest.
I mean, I don't even think that this draft required any vague amounts of intelligence. I think that somehow, after an entire split that was defined almost entirely by these two champions, people are still picking Aphelios with Jinx open, and vice versa is always going to be the most superior one. Jinx into Aphelios will always be winning. Aphelios ends up having to take damage to approach Jinx compositions, but this is a GP Jinx composition. At that point, you don't even have to play Zac Udyr dive, you just sit them back with the Jinx, because eventually, Jinx is going to be untouchable. This is how you counter the Aphelios. You play anything but engage into them, and there they had full outrange because of the composition that was opted into by CLG. They went for the Sylas, and then they went for the Aphelios. So I didn't really, like, at a very, very high level, you could call it in draft. How it actually ended up happening in game here is that you still saw instances where CLG were able to get better positioning and were able to mitigate the amount of HP that they would have, damage that they would have to take to win fights. But the later the game went, the easier the game was to execute for Ginger Turmeric's. As you can see here, like in the early phase here, AGT are just heavily split around this terrain, going for the Drake, which leads to the Zac being killed, which leads to this situation where now they basically have to give up everything to CLG. They're splitting into 3 different areas here, so CLG feel very, very confident, and then they move towards the Jinx here, and then they realize they can't feel that confident. They do manage to get the hook out on the Jinx, but Jinx gets the cleanse. Jinx can't be killed because she's under tower, and now they can actually chase. At this kind of a range, the only way Aphelios can get damage on Jinx is by putting himself in danger as well, not just to the Jinx damage, but also to the Udyr and to everyone else on that team. This is how later fights go. So here you saw the small bits of mispositioning advantages that CLG could take advantage of with Ginger Turmeric's, and then you saw how things would actually progress over a long period of time. And as the entire game went, it ended up being all about that disadvantage that CLG have when it becomes a straight up 3-on-3, 4-on-4, 5-on-5, given the presence of that Jinx.
What an absolutely wonderful and beautiful summation of the events of this game. I think that there's nothing more to be said. That's it. All right, cool, guys. I'll see you later.
I agree.
Like, that was a lot of that, right? Exactly like you mentioned. The consistent tug of war that ended up happening only ended up benefiting one side over the other. And although we could kind of predict it depending on the draft and how it was, but truly the results of the game are where decided it. And there's one main factor to what you saw in so many of those fights and overextensions. It was the use of Renata. We're talking about the UCD, talking about the utility usages that can happen for either side. And Renata we saw last week as well, which is such a massive factor. And although there was the combination of a Mr. Shillia ult on the other side, and unfortunately it just did not hit the same here, Iso.
Yeah, even though Keel gets a bit caught out here for free, CLG goes for the Nash, and I mean, the fight ends up being a pretty clean 4v5 wipe. Trevor tries to go for a hook on Moose Hater as opposed to just saving Flay to stop his engage. They're just sort of trying to keep them off the Nash, and CLG doesn't have a great way. Obviously, they don't outrange the Jinx like Veteran said. Aphelios cannot get in range to hit the Jinx. He just sort of has to, tank damage in order to hit. and they don't have great engage. They're going on the Zac here. They split up the fight with Zac ult. Renata ult makes it so, they can't fight back, and Jinx is just having a firing range on the rest of their team. So this is pretty indicative of how the rest of the team fights would go later into the game. You would see one later at the bot inhib where they try everything they can to get on the Jinx, and they just don't have enough juice in the tank to actually get on the main carry. So they kind of just fall.
When it comes to a reset composition, you need 3 specific things. You need displacement, lockdown, and burst. Zac provides a displacement, Renata provides a lockdown, and then Jinx Gangplank provides all of the burst you need, and then Jinx is rolling with her passive. It is such a disgusting composition that they have once you get to that stage, assuming you're not getting caught out left, right, and center, right? So once things started calming down a bit, they were good to go. Great play by the Zac there, but these tiny things CLG do wrong, the fresh throwing the hook on the Zac, it ends up ending the game for them because their composition can't afford any of these kinds of mistakes.
And where we stand right now, we did make the bold claim that whoever won the first game will rightfully win the second. And although AGT were already the favorites going into this game, I know when we were deliberating this game as well, we were thinking it could riskily gone either way. And considering what CLG have shown, I still do stand by that. But maybe, AGT can continue to at least prove us right and give Iso his prediction as well. But Vetter and I still stand on the outskirts, although not out of the prediction game just yet. This next game can truly and will decide it all. Now, of course, all these teams are already locked in to go into PG, right? They're all good to go alongside DK crew as well. So there's not a ton at stake here currently. Of course, shout out to them. What they're playing for is now, of course, playoff seeding, prize pools, and so much more. So, in 5 words, what do you think will happen in this game? 5 words.
5 words.
5 words. It's already 4 now. It's 4.
CLG is one word. CLG will play
right, cool.
for bot.
So according to Iso, what will happen is CLG. Perfect. Thank you for the summary. Now, of course, I will go ahead and pass it off to some, not so much my favorites anymore. You guys keep dropping it down. You don't like the nicknames. I'm sorry. It's fine. I'll pass it off to Jolly and the other guy.
What, I'm happy about the fact that we're his favorites and he's gonna flame us for it. Hold on. Wait a second. We were so proud. I literally said I was gonna wear it as like a badge of honor. Ravish, and now like.
Am I getting ran checked by a host who got brought in an hour before broadcast right now? Like, is that actually happening to me? Jeez, man.
Okay, game. We'll talk about the game. No, we love our host. We love Ravish.
We love Ravish. We love our analysts.
He's incredible, and the analysts, of course. It's great to have Iso on, and Vet always brings some really good analysis to these games, and I do think that they were correct in talking about this one. I like how Vet still has that copium for CLG right now. Okay, he is still faithful. He's like, it's gonna turn around. It's gonna happen. Of course, there were two predictions on that desk, of course, for CLG taking this, but it was a 2-1 that they called out. Even though, again, I'll mention it again, they did say on the desk before, it wasn't on the desk actually, it was before the show even started, that this series in particular is a very tiltable series, or these are more tiltable teams, right? That's kind of something they were focusing on. So they're like, whoever takes game number 1 is basically going to tilt out the other team, and they're going to be able to roll this one through in another 2-0 sweep. So we'll actually have to see if that comes to fruition. There has been that side swap that's come through, so now it's going to be the opportunity here for CLG to get their first picks instead of trying to get some of these counter picks, and I just hope it's not Gnar. You and I were talking about this kind of over the break here, and I get the Gnar early pick. I'm a huge Gnar fan. I get that he's a solid one into the blinds, but right now there are just too many opportunities to take that down, and I think there's been a lot more focus towards the mid bot side of the map for this series in particular.
There are responses to the Gnar, and if you're going to blind pick it, you have to be ready for whatever's going to show up. Because I've seen people who play the Gnar into a bunch of different picks, into like Aurelia or Gwen or anything else that you would pick into it that you really like the matchup into on the other side, and still beat it. And if you're able to do that, that's astonishing. Otherwise, at least tread more lightly around the pick, because it obviously didn't work out super well last game. It did okay. I don't think it did badly. It's not definitely the replacement I would like to see. But CLG, I love that our desk also talked about especially Izo, I think was forced into talking about before our host so rudely interrupted him and said that he wasted his 5 words. But I agree. I think playing around bot lane is a big one here. Not only is Aaron a pretty big carry and actually did pretty well at the beginning of that game, having the 2 kills, being able to use it really effectively to leverage it around neutral objectives, but also Trevor played really well. Both supports played immaculately, and so enabling these supports feels like a goal for both of these teams right now because both their supports showed some really, really solid play in the last game.
Yeah, and I think, that's where it is definitely a good thing for CLG Faith to try to play towards that, but also we saw what happens when it's played toward and it doesn't quite get carried through to the rest of the game efficiently enough, right? I don't know how many times I brought up that first blood into double kill going over to Aaron to start the game out, and that's on an Aphelios who, to get them scaling really early is fantastic. It allowed for Trevor to have some of that early roam, but it didn't actually really transfer into the later parts of the game. You had the Jinx who, even though she was behind to start the game out, ended up coming out and doing so much damage. And I think I do think it was Izo who was talking about just the inability for Aphelios to get into position, and that's where I was calling out CLG. It's not really about their position, it's about their picks here, and they weren't able to find those picks, whereas on the other side, AOE was all about positioning, and they absolutely nailed it. So we're gonna have to see exactly how that transfers over, but again, because there's a side swap selection, I can almost guarantee that Gnar is not gonna be the first pick again.
They also don't necessarily need to force these flex picks. So Ginger Turmeric have the benefit of having players that are pretty moldable to pools, because obviously you saw like the Zac, the Gangplank get flexed around a bit. They don't have to do that as much on the red side. So that is at least one other thing. It's like they can do it 100%. They can use the counter picks really effectively in flex champions like that. But they do not have to. They can instead choose more solidified matchups, which is one, I guess, benefit here for Ginger Turmeric. CLG must have a bunch of priority on the Udyr this game. That's the only thing that it tells me. Is like they either want the ban to come through, or they have they just like fully intend to just first pick B1 Udyr 100% the way that Ginger Turmeric did in the previous game.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And, this is something where we've also seen the Bel'Veth be pulled out by Ginger Turmeric in the past here by Keel. Maybe it wasn't as efficient. But I do think that I would like to see a little bit more, of kind of the crazy play that we're used to seeing from CLG Faith. We've seen the Wukong come out for Rosethorn here. I want to see a little bit more initiation by him early on. And also Draco. I've been talking of Draco. We've been talking about how the Camille and the Fiora are 2 automatic bans. This time it was the Gwen and the Fiora. The Camille was still left up and available, and they ended up really early picking that Gnar. So maybe giving another option to say, hey, go back to what Draco we know you can do well on. And this is Camille, Fiora, and Gwen. He can play all 3 of those champions into counter picks. We've seen that happen in the past and him come out ahead.
So interested. Yeah, I think setting up Draco for a little bit better of a laning phase would be beneficial. Not that the Gnar, again, was necessarily a bad pick, just that, again, it seems to be that when Draco's in a comfortable matchup, especially a carry matchup that he's comfortable in, it seems to be better. And in that game, it was like he and Moosehater went back a little bit back and forth during the laning phase, but there was no solo kill. It was actually a CS advantage for Draco, but before the team fighting really kicked off, that was when the gold beats started to swap back to the side of AGT. So maybe set up CLG. Like, Draco is an option. I think I'm leaning towards Aaron and Trevor receiving more. It seemed like last game they did well. It seems like they got the better of Deep Learn and Duo King during the early portions of the laning phase, and that could be a potential for them to gank for us. Might be a target for Rosethorn. If that's the case, you don't necessarily have the ability to cross map for Draco unless they go for like hey, let's put Town on a roaming champion and let's let him also gank these lanes so that we can just attack both sides very effectively.
Yeah, and that was a comfort pick. Oh no. Drive crash. That's all right. We'll get back into it here quickly. We at least got to see a few of those picks, and we didn't get to see the final ban, but it was a swap. Just so you guys know, the order of the first 3 bans in that game, number 1, it was Fiora, then Gwen, then Senna. So now you can tell AOE Ginger Turmeric is taking a moment to say, okay, who is the final one that we want to do? And actually, thank you, production, the best ever in the world, not just NA. It was Udyr as that final lock in here. So definitely a good one, but that also leaves a lot of these priority picks open for someone like Draco, which now at this point in the matchup, it feels like Ginger Turmeric just isn't really that scared of.
It's possible, or at least they feel like Moosehater has gotten the better of him in most of the laning phases. Again, in the Sejuani matchup, he played Trundle and he played Poppy, and he won both of those handily.
Yep.
In that last game, the Zac was really effective inside of teamfights. Again, the laning phase wasn't miraculous, but he did force the flash in an attempted kill against Draco at one point on the Gnar, and then also had really good teamfights. So it seems as though Moosehater's been performing rather well inside the top lane. Draco just hasn't been able to figure it out against them. And because of that, they must feel confident. They must say, hey, you know what? You know, pick the Gwen, pick the Camille. It doesn't really matter to us. As long as you don't have the Fiora, we don't think you're capable of taking over on top side.
Yeah, and if there's a bit more momentum, too, that can be picked up by CLG Faith in the earlier parts of the game, I think they can do a lot more with it, because we were talking about how Kiel really didn't have a ton of influence on the map in the early parts of the game, but it didn't matter, right? Because you had this scaling health, this scaling defense coming through out of Moose Hater and Kiel. So at the end of the day, it's like, we want to see more Kiel. You didn't need to see more Kiel. It was fine for him to continue grinding. And actually, I think, another thing that I do have to mention, I'm pretty sure the first player actually to hit 200 CS in that game was Draco on the Gnar. So it wasn't even one of those ADCs of either Jinx or Aphelios, who you absolutely assume are going to hit that spike a little bit earlier on. But there was so much pressure, there was so much movement towards the bottom side of the lane, and again, the really early roaming coming out of particularly Trevor, but both supports here, that allowed for a lot of that pressure to go back towards the mid side, which kind of felt like CLG was avoiding at the first part of the game, and that's what Ginger Turmeric exactly wanted.
And I think with all of the bans having gone through the way that they did, I don't recall a Renata being banned off the board, and that might actually end up being first pick here from the side of CLG. Not only was that amazing, in my opinion, from Duo King, I thought he had one of the best Renata performances I've seen in the tournament so far. But also Trevor was really good with it. He went undefeated on it in the previous series when they played up against their opposition in AOE Random. So if Trevor gets his hands on that again, that's another playmaking support, range support to use in the bottom lane, and it would help out if they want to play down there. But even if they don't want to play down to the bottom lane, I think it's pretty decent priority. It's something to consider as one of these kind of series meta type picks, where it's like both teams are vying for a handful of champions that both players on both sides want to play. That might be one of them. Is in this series, it might end up getting leveraged if we go to a game 3 for a ban. It might end up being something that gets picked very early by both these teams, just because they want the pick so much.
Absolutely. I agree. And, that's something that, yes, we know that Trevor really likes, these more tanky opportunities for like the Thresh, right? When I think of him, I also think of things like the Nautilus, but kind of the same can be said about members like Dombre, who have done a little bit more of adjusting towards the newer ones. But I will say the Renata Glask for has been a massive priority. So I would like to see, maybe a little bit more of a fight for that, especially with how well she meshes with a lot of the ADCs down towards the bottom side. That, or just like we kind of saw in the last draft, the bottom draft was towards the end, right? I think we saw second or third picks in terms of the ADCs, but the supports were waited until the very last moment to actually lock those in. So maybe trying to get that duo locked in a little bit earlier on as well, get a bit of that cohesion instead of just trying to find what's not banned away.
Like I said, when it comes to the support matchup, this was the one I was super hyped for, because both these guys have a little bit of I would say a little bit of tarnish on the names because of behavioral things in the past. I'm not willing to dive in any more than just that. But they're both incredible players. They're both some of the best supports we have inside of this. And you saw a number of times where that playmaking came through from both of them. You don't get that type of playmaking out of a lot of supports most of the time. And yet both of them were very, very forward about the fact that they wanted to play for their team, wanted to make things happen. And so these are two that we're going to see in Proving Grounds, two that we're going to see competing against academy level competition. We've already seen Trevor do it before. I'm excited to see, especially playing like that specifically on the Renata was one of the best performances I've seen out of Duo King literally all season, maybe in his career so far. And so seeing him go into academy and be able to play against Proving Grounds level teams, I think would be astonishing as well if he brings that kind of play, because that's just what this team is. Specifically, they all have high ceiling, maybe even like capless ceilings when it comes to the talent on some of these players. It's just that we see them not be able to live up to that from time to time. But this is one where you're getting one of those instances where the roof is off the potential, and you're getting a chance to see what these players can do at their absolute finest.
Exactly. Yeah, sorry for the delay here again, folks. Of course, there was a crash during the draft here, so I just have to get everything back in, start the same exact lock-ins again. We saw the bans at both of these teams. CLG Faith on the blue side this time banned out Karthus, Poppy, and Gangplank. So the GP, definitely a respect ban that was taken away there. But on the other side, AOE Ginger Turmeric has Fiora, Senna, and Udyr as the lock-in. So we can see right there exactly the same as we head into the first pick phase here for game number 2. AOE Ginger Turmeric sitting at match point.
All right, we're getting to kick things off. I also love the fact that, again, the Gangplank is getting taken off because they can flex it. Captain Shrimps is willing to take a mid lane, and he did pretty great in Town. Town is somebody that I think everybody was hyped for, and so Captain Shrimps coming out doing that was, to me, unexpected to be that dominant in the laning phase. As we get Seraphine, first overall BU1 here, as a little bit of a flex. Town can play it, Aaron can probably play it, Trevor can probably play it. They've got a lot of flexibility with a champion like that.
Yep, I love that one. And AOE Ginger Turmeric, they're just going to run it back. Deep Learn did an incredible job there on the Jinx, even falling behind a little bit in the early parts. So just kind of what we were anticipating of bottom lanes being locked in as quickly as possible. Here now it might end up going towards the jungle, depending on what the situation is for Ginger Turmeric, because CLG has locked in that one. That the Renata Glask is still up and available, and it is going to be the jungle pick, and we're going back to basics. We're doing the Xin Zhao for Keel.
Interesting. So not going for anything crazy, not going to go for anything intense right here. Instead, we're just going for this Xin Zhao pick for Keel, which is not unexpected. It's just going to mean he's probably a little bit more active after first, second clear, that type of area. He's going to get more active on the map. As we're getting Seraphine Ashe in the bottom lane, likely to be not even like it could be the Ashe support and the Seraphine taking most of the farm in this particular avenue. It's something that we've seen pop up just a little bit over the course of these the tournament and over the course of like pro play consistently, and I really like it. I think it's a great way for supports that are really good to really flex some ability, because the Ashe is something that can do quite a bit of work. As we get Rosethorn's Viego, really big pick for Rosethorn, and we go back to the Narb. This time it is defended, however, because you can double ban champions that might be good into it.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity now, and CLG finally has the chance to get this counter pick off potentially for Draco. Of course, Moose Hater locking in that Gnar that we were talking about. It's not a first pick, so I'm much more comfortable with that one. The Gwen is taken away. I will say Gwen Viego, disgusting. A disgusting combination, even when they're fighting from behind. They have the sustainability, the survivability that is just innate within their kits that can be great. So definitely a good takeaway from Draco there. They're going to finalize it with the Camille. So all three of those picks that we were talking about, Fiora, Camille, Gwen, that Draco really excels on, have been removed. Not just that, but the Gnar that he tried to go with in that last game has been removed by the opposing team. So it's going to be the Rumble taken away again from Captain Shrimps. That was not locked in there in that first phase. And finalizing things with the Silas.
Yeah, it's just pinching as much as possible towards the pool of Captain Shrimps, because they're likely to pick it here first. Nope, they actually end up picking the Tahm Kench. Nothing insane about that. There's a lot of pick potential between the Ashe Arrow and between the Seraphine Ultimate, the Encore. Not to mention, if you're trying to deny somebody from dying to Viego, getting a bunch of resets, Tahm Kench is a great champion to do that with. Oh! Okay, so now the real question, do we get the Ashe support with the NF ADC, or do we get NF support with Ashe ADC like the olden days? And I know the answer is going to be Ashe support with the Seraphine Flex into the mid lane, but I do love that CLG pulls out something like this, as well as going for Sejuani in the top lane once again as the response. This didn't work the last time, but with this big of a teamfight composition, these ultimates are huge. You combine an Encore with a bullet time, and you buy so much space for Town, or for, my apologies, Rosethorn, to really be able to do work here.
I love it. I love it. This is exactly what CLG needs to pull out to try to stay into this one, right? You were talking about, hey, some of these flex picks that AOE Ginger Turmeric, they didn't necessarily need those coming into this game, so they decided not to go that route, but CLG Faith said, okay, well, we'll kind of mess around here a little bit, and I really do think having that Seraphine as the early lock-in allowed them some of this kind of, that flexibility, mobility, if you will, even though we were still expecting, the Seraphine to not be in the support position. I love the aggression opportunities here that CLG Faith has in the bottom side, but I also, again, like looking towards the late stages of the game here for AOE Ginger Turmeric, because they have set those up for some really solid scaling once more, give or take a couple of jams.
It feels like a situation where CLG is playing for their team fighting composition around their ultimates. Those are the big ones. Like, it's not that these champions necessarily are bad without ultimates. It's just that their ultimates are going to have so much impact that using them improperly, missing ultimates, anything like that is a big no-no. So AGT, they're on the opposite foot. I feel like if they end up getting out of a fight unscathed with those ultimates going down, they could walk out relatively easily as long as they are tagged by those abilities.
Well, let's see how it plays out. CLG Faith on the blue side, AOE Ginger Turmeric on the red side. It is game number 2 and match point for AOE GTCs. The last chance for CLG Faith to get themselves some better seeding, some better positioning, as these teams are both already locked into top 10.
Goodness gracious. I am... What I'm looking at right now is double tier mid lane and bot lane, and then potentially a third tier coming out of the Ashe. That's a pretty standard build in the modern era. So you can get 3 tiers on the bottom side of the map. And if I'm Keel and I'm seeing triple tier bottom side of the map, that is the only place that I am pathing to. I don't worry about the Sejuani. I'm not that worried about the Viego. I am attacking as much as I can. You got set up with Captain Shrimps, with the E. You got Duo King if he finds a solid W, like he's able to knock some members up. But really and truthfully, I feel like Keel can do some significant damage if this mid and bot lane are not able to get off to a pretty decent flying start here for CLG.
Probably, a relatively slow one, right? Yeah, you want the flying start, but the whole point of Ginger Turmeric sitting here is going to say, no, you're not going to have that early first blood. And even if you do, we have ways to stall this out and, again, push kind of towards extending that later game stage for CLG Faith to be able to really convene for themselves here and move into a team fight opportunity. It is going to be the cleanse, of course, that we see on Deep Learn, just in case. There's the Enchanted Crystal Arrow. There's a lot of opportunities as well. The Encore, all kinds of different situations you do not want to get yourself caught up in here. So once again, a lot of pressure kind of being put onto Deep Learn to do some of the heavy carrying for this game, at least in the latter half, because it's up to Captain Shrimps towards the beginning.
Yeah, Captain Shrimps has range to work with. I was a little surprised when we saw the Cinder come out, just because there's a lot of champions with a lot of range that also are played by Captain Shrimps. My first thought actually went right to Xerath. I'm like, wow, this composition without Sejuani ultimate probably just has no way to get onto Xerath. Maybe Ashe ultimate as well. You should be far enough back that you shouldn't be hit by, like, either Town or Aaron for the most part. But ends up going for the Syndra, I think, is a deterrent for Rosethorn, who's going to be a big member, a deterrent for Draco as well. Any of these engagers that are going to buy space for Aaron and Town and Trevor to kind of walk up. And that's what Captain Shrimp's job is, to deny that first engagement and make sure that his team is able to make a kind of counter punch happen when the time comes.
Yep, and an ability like Scatter the Weak is just perfect for that, isn't it, Rebel Fox?
Yes, sure is.
Yeah, it does of course, fall off in the later parts, right? That's the thing that you have to kind of worry about, but the rest of the team for Ginger Turmeric is totally fine with that. It is CLG who has had a lot of the pressure here on the bottom side, but the one thing you have to consider is the expenditure of mana that they have to be able to continue this poke. In the meantime, Rosethorn trying to come in to make a save for himself here. It is going to be smited by Keel for the blue buff, so no exchange.
Yeah, a lot of the pushing power in bottom lane comes from the fact that, yes, Tahm Kench is kind of ranged. He's, for the most part, melee. He's, like, weirdly ranged auto attacks, like, not super ranged. And they don't have a lot of control, because the Ashe is able to put in a bunch of damage. The MF, if you go E level 1, you can easily capture more than enough control to warrant to damage and to warrant, like, everything against Deep Learn and Duo King. So they're shoved in pretty easily inside of this one, to open up for Rosethorn to go attempt at something akin to an invade to look for the blue buff steal potentially. If you got a smite, maybe that comes through. He's now going to contest for the Scuttle Crab on the top side, which is a bit strange because Keel, I think, is perfectly, or at least he's willing to try to take something like this. Keel's in a rough situation. He's going to jump on Town.
It's Draco moving down as well as Moose Hater, but it's just too much damage onto Keel. Has to flash away. The flash in response from Rosethorn and Town means that they're going to be able to secure that first blood. The continuation of this fight is a double kill over to Rosethorn. Duo King not going to get there in time. CLG Faith once again picking up first blood as a double kill.
That's just so painful. I don't even want to see it in the replay, but I know that Captain Shrimps made a pretty dire mistake right there that ends up costing quite a bit. You think, as Keel, you're like, okay, in the one-on-one, I might be fine against the Viego. It's not super easy to actually make things happen, and our very, very mean producer is going to force us to watch this, but I want to show you guys what happened anyway. As Keel is waiting here, again, he's able to see Viego with the W, and doesn't have faith, I guess, at, like, taking the one-on-one, which is fair, because Town's here first. But watch this. Here's the scat of the week. Take a wild guess who it hits. It's not even close. It's not even close. Where was he aiming at? I don't understand. Not to be super, like, critical, but the Q wasn't even near anyone at that point. I was so lost as to what had happened, because it just seems like it was completely misplaced, unfortunately, and it leads to the death of both him and his jungler, which is, he's doing fine in the laning phase. You can see him doing some pretty solid damage to Town, being able to have enough control of the wave, but Keel going down and giving 2 kills to Rosethorn does make this game really difficult for the Xin Zhao.
Yep, especially when we were talking about the early parts of the game, kind of, being a lot on Captain Shrimp's shoulders, right? Especially going with somebody like this Cinder, having the opportunity to have something like Scat of the Week to push members back, waste some of the time and the utility coming out of CLG Faith. You also see that is a first strike Cinder going on right there. So really looking to get some early game aggro that did not come to fruition.
We love that rune. It's a good rune.
Oh, we do.
When you're able to tag it, it's always got some value to it. And Captain Shrimps is going to punish as much as he can against Town, because in that lane is not going to feel too bad. As Moose Hater being bullied a bit by Draco, he actually has, with the hyper procs, actually turns that trade around really effectively, ends up turning that into a solid one. With Fleet Footwork, is going to have a bit more sustain than Draco is going to inside of this laning phase, so feels fine about that one.
Feels fine about that. It's also, going in with the flashless Sejuani. Of course, he's got the teleport and the ignite, which is standard, but definitely it puts you in a really rough situation when you have somebody as mobile as a Gnar on the opposite side. and has both of those summoner spells up and available right now for himself. So definitely something you have to watch out for. CLG Faith does have a bit of a gold lead here thanks to that early double kill. It's only about 1,000. They might increase that a little bit here for themselves, being able to pick up the dragon, which once again, we're still looking at that Hex Dragon as the first one here of the game. Trevor doing his classic roaming, looking for an opportunity for a death sentence. He's actually just gonna go right on in. It's Draco. It's Town to follow it up with the echoed E, and it's another kill for CLG Faith.
CC forever get locked down from basically out of vision. Well played by Draco, well communicated by Town. The push on the bottom side is giving them Dragon. The play on the top side, it's Draco stacking a couple of minions here, maybe a plate over to Moose Hater in exchange for the play in the mid lane, just to try to buy some breathing room for Town on this Seraphine pick. Now Moose Hater even under some threat, could potentially lose his life. He has to get the star bar stacked immediately. Okay.
That could have been it. He's looking for Mega here. He will be able to reach it. Does have his ultimate, but we're going to take a quick look at the replay since that fight is now over in the top.
Yeah, again, this is just like, it's crazy that they're able to make so much happen around the map. Because again, this is while Dragon is going on, and there's not a ton of damage between these two members, but again, they just CC him to death. It feels like Captain Shrimps wasn't able to move at all for a couple of seconds there, which is more than enough time for the Seraphine and the Sejuani to put in the damage necessary to make things happen. As you can see, it's a great early game once again from CLG Faith. They're up about 1,000 gold, but they've got gold in the right places. Rosethorn's got a little bit, Seraphine's got a little bit to help control some of the mid lane. They grabbed the first dragon as well. They're just across the board looking perfectly fine. This is how we saw the last game go as well, where they won some early skirmish. They won a couple of plays very, very quickly inside of the game.
They did. That first dragon did end up going over to AOE, and that, first blood, the double kill was in favor of the bottom lane. So maybe it forced a little bit more pressure down towards the bottom instead of trying to sort of deal now with Town and Rosethorn towards the top or the middle portion of the map here. So now AOE Turmeric has to be scared, and this is, the opportunity that you have when you have somebody like Seraphine. You can go in, you can give some pokes, but you need the backup of your team, and right there is Rosethorn. So it is Town trying to look for some sort of initiation or follow-up engage on this. It's not going to end up happening, though.
Nope. Instead, you actually have roaming from the support here. Duo King's going to be up here making sure nothing is particularly bad is going to happen. You got 4 members now on top side as well for both teams. It looks like both ADCs are hanging around towards the bottom lane as Moose Hater is under some threat. He's going to go mini-Gnar. He's going to walk blind into multiple members.
That is definitely a rough one, and Moose Hater is going to go down just like that. It's 4-0. The kill going over to Rosethorn, who's now sitting at 3-0 here, Rebel Fox.
Yeah, it's a situation where, once again, Rosethorn wanting to step up for this team, wanting to be the leader, takes this Viego pick, and it's just made it work immediately inside of this game. Finding the right plays, finding the right positions, and finding 3 kills to kick things off, finding the Rift Herald, the early objective control. So looking a lot more dominant than what we even saw in Game 1. Game 1, it felt like that Dragon push was really the major play that got them going. It was the major play that got Aaron off to a 2-kill start. But this game doesn't have that. Instead, it's just consistent bleeding coming through here from CLG Faith, or from Ginger Turmeric, as Trevor launches an arrow. Is he going to tag the back here? Deep Is he going to kill him? No.
It's not enough for the kill. So close. Oh my gosh. Deep Learn definitely had a mini heart attack right there, but he's going to be able to get out alive.
Had to be entirely blind, too. Like, he might have saw that Jinx was leaving from the vision of the minions, but he was well behind his tower, just in a random position in the lane. And so, that was Trevor. He just, took a shot in the dark. He said, I'll throw this out. I'll see what happens. Maybe not a perfect shot in the dark. Maybe it wasn't just, a complete blind shot. Maybe he was like, okay, I think he'll be about here. And he tags him. He just stops his back, makes it a little bit worse for him. He buys himself and Aaron quite a bit more space on the bottom side.
No Scorch, apparently, though. Because that could have been the kill right there for Trevor. But, of course, that's not the style that he is going for. It's this supportive style so that he can get Aaron as many kills as possible. And Aaron is feeling pretty comfortable right now up in this lane. In the meantime, it's another back and forth here between Draco and Moose Hater. Out goes the Ignite. Will it be enough? Not quite to be able to pick up that kill. But Draco sends Moose Hater back the moment he comes into lane.
Oh, man. Incredible to see that Draco is just completely, turned on it. The Sejuani pick, again, just did not work out in the earlier parts.
There it is. Enchanted Crystal Arrow. Dual King's going to be able to gobble up Deep Learn. That guarantees that they will all get out safely. 30 seconds left before the dragon spawns, though, and CLG Faith is in position.
Didn't he just use that ultimate? It's already a quarter back up. Goodness gracious. He's like a level 6 Ashe, and that's already got that little cooldown. It's Captain Shrimps in the mid lane. I don't think has the damage to pump that out onto town. Probably would have had to flash ultimate if he wanted a chance, but not going to be the case. Instead, Ginger Turmeric, again, just continue to absorb as much as possible to ensure that they're not losing anything else across the map. Hoping they can get to a position where like they feel comfortable team fighting like they did in the previous game.
Rosethorn and Keel. A little bit of a dance back and forth.
He knows where Keel is. Keel doesn't know where he is. Well,
Exactly.
now he knows. He actually probably saw him on the way in, so he did know where Rosethorn was.
Right,
Oh,
yeah, with the
no.
move up, thanks to that deep ward behind the dragon pit. And that dragon is now live. And CLG Faith kind of more primed in position. That's going to be a flash away from Captain Shrimps. The Heartbreaker on top of it. CLG Town is not going to find that echoed beat drop, but it doesn't matter because Rosethorn able to pick up the kill. Once again here, CLG Faith finding a kill, and we are in a very quick pause. So, you know, maybe I kind of jinxed a little bit when I said that we were only going to have one problem today.
And it was like right there again. It was another missed scat of the week from like what is a very experienced player. You saw Captain Shrimps in the first game kind of go off on the gangplank. He's somebody that's played previously for LCS affiliated teams, for amateur, for a lot of really talented teams. He's been there and he's done that a number of times. And so it's weird to see him make these just little random kind of mechanical mistakes after such an impressive game on the gangplank. They come out here on the Syndra, another pick that, again, we don't see that often. Honestly, This is probably just a preference pick for dealing with the range, dealing with some of the people up close. But for the one purpose that we keep highlighting is being like, oh yeah, the scat of the week is super valuable into these members that want to, close the space against you. It just isn't working. Like, it's not working effectively.
Yeah, no, so I thought, and I don't know if we're going to have a replay of that fight, I thought for a second that this Scout of the Week actually missed because of the Heartbreaker, but I might be wrong there. It might have actually taken place after the Heartbreaker, and at that point, he was just too close. The Viego was too close for any real anticipation to come through for Captain Shrimps to say, okay, I can Scout of the Week this direction, that, or, sometimes the other side of it, it's not even the Scout of the Weeks that are kind of poorly executed. It's more the cues that are poorly established to actually set up for that Scout of the Week so that it goes in the direction. So you kind of have a little bit of proxy space or room, sort of like with the Zaya feathers, right? You place them in a location so that the enemy has to actually navigate around them just in the standard laning phase when they're trying to CS. And I haven't quite felt that coming out of Captain Shrimps on this one. It's really just been to try to get some farm, and that meant it was an opportunity here where we've got Keel not really able to do a lot, and Rosethorn just taking big advantages of being able to get up close to that Syndra.
Punishing mid lane as much as possible. And again, this is a composition that bodes well when they've got enough of a team fight together and enough of these cooldowns together that this early game lead feels really good for them. If they get this misfortune, they get the Ashe, they get the Seraphine in a good place, where then their Viego is just absurdly fed compared to what the rest of the team is going to look like, where Viego should be in the confines of the game. It feels like it's easy enough that, again, you hit 1-2 big team fighting ultimates, that's all that's necessary. Is Rift Herald's going to get dropped in mid lane? They should crack mid-outer tower here. This actually should be just first tower outright.
Yep.
Goodness gracious.
First tower, it's again going over to CLG Faith. Ooh, that was in fact the Encore that just got shot out there by Town to try to pick up Keel. He was able to flash away from it though, an ultimate for a flash, definitely something that CLG Faith is willing to take a trade on there. And also, by the way, just so you all know, the reason for that pause was that a cat knocked something off of a CLG player's desk. Apparently it was not a liquid onto equipment, which is always scary. Rosethorn gonna get mowed up here by Duo King. That should be an easy pickup for Keel.
Eaten alive by Keel right there. Actually, really, I'm going to give props to Duo King once again, because again, he kind of just Chad walks right up to the dragon and says, I don't care about the dragon. I'm going to hit the jungler, who has a shutdown right now, and hand it to my jungler, who needs the gold. And that's exactly what he does. And they had no real way of stopping him. Cooldowns had been burnt in a number of different places previous to this. They put focus into making sure the mid tower went down, which was, I think, the right choice from CLG in the grand scheme of things, because they knock mid tower and they get gold for it. But again, it does cost them at least something, which was the life of their jungler as Rosethorn gets brought down. Duo King finding some kind of punishment here.
Still rough for Captain Shrimps, though, right? Still rough for, you know, this early game opportunity really to come through from AOE Ginger Turmeric so that they actually have an efficient mid laner going later into the game, because that is a problem. Syndra is one of those. It's not like she's going to be scaling up heavily towards the end. If you don't get some early kills, a little bit of early pressure, if she gets shut down incredibly early on, then there's not a ton of recovery, and she's sort of just a very weak, squishy body that the enemy team has access to right now. Nice vision to show up for AOE Ginger Turmeric. Of course, they've already got some deep vision that's been placed there by CLG Faith, and that's no big surprise that the next direction that they are looking is up toward the top side of the map.
Be interesting to see if they can shut out Moose Hater and really start taking advantage of the Sejuani matchup that Draco has been able to exploit already inside of this game. I am curious, though. I mean, we're at 2,000 gold advantage. This is where we were at for CLG Faith in game number 1. They are up 2 dragons to 0, which is nice. So the next dragon fight might give us an indication as to whether Ginger Turmeric are still really competitive, or if they're kind of struggling to find their footing inside a game like this. The Jinx isn't accelerated at all. The gold really is just kind of sparse in most places. Nobody is really finding a way to get any type of advantage. So staying relevant's a little shocking to me as Moose Hater. Not going to let Draco walk away for free. The last Hyper proc is not going to come through, as Meganar is also ready, so it's not going to mean too much. It's Duo King's ultimate traded right there for Aaron and Trevor's ultimate, so saving Deep Learning. Effectively, the Tahm Kench is working out pretty well here.
You can see Keel maybe looking for a play there as well. Some pings coming out because they have eyes on Rosethorn, as well as Town potentially moving down here. Trying to play some more of that aggressive vision. In the meantime, Draco's taking a lot of damage. Can he make it enough? Nope, there it is. The stacks are enough here for Moose Hater to be able to win out in that 1v1.
I swear Moose Hater has got to be Draco's kryptonite. Like, Draco has been so good against so many top laners, and yet somehow Moose Hater has just absolutely flexed on him in the 3, now 4 games that they've played against each other. The Sejuani's even been bullying him most of the laning phase, and yet Moose Hater just pulls a solo bolo out of his bag of tricks, apparently. So, good stuff right there. Rift Herald is also available right now. That 1 kill did help quite a bit. I think Top Tower went down as well, which took the gold lead down to 800, just off the back of Moose Hater making his own individual play. We're hoping the Gnar has a lot more impact, because that's where the gold is right now for Ginger Turmeric.
Yep, and now things are scary too. CLG says, hey, maybe we can take this second Rift Herald. We kind of need this second Rift Herald, actually. We can't allow Ginger Turmeric to get more advantage potentially in these lanes to really tie things up and extend that gold lead. CLG Faith, they saw the pressure on the top side. There's not a lot they can do about it. Now the rest of the team has to converge here. They all will be collecting. It is still Aaron down on the bottom side, so it's going to be a 5v4 if CLG Faith decides to initiate. More than half of the health has been taken away from this second Rift Herald. It's a nice little stun there onto Duo King, but not necessarily the target that they're going for. And that Rift Herald will be taken down by Ginger Turmeric. A nice encore to come through from Town, a following lockdown on top of it. The bullet time as well, but it's not going to be enough damage. Captain Shrimp stalling that out at the end. The ultimate coming through from Captain Shrimps on Aaron, who has to flash away. The zap is not going to hit. Now it's Town and Rosethorn trying to take as much damage onto this mid laner as possible. Will it be enough? The echoed Q is for the kill there. They're going to pick up a double kill for Town. Can they get enough damage on the Moose Hater to keep the one alive? No, it is a killing spree. Rosethorn goes down, but a double kill over to Aaron. Oh, this guy of the week. I don't want to talk about it. The E as well, the beat drop, the flash, the echoed beat drop. Not quite enough. Lots happening in this game.
3 for 4 around the neutral objective. It's a humongous fight that once again leads to a little bit more gold for CLG. And there's so many moving parts to this. First off, the fact that they're pushing to make sure that the MF is not going to be able to be here in time for the fight, and they're able to get the Rift Herald down before really in position. And I enjoyed that quite a bit from the side of AGP. I think they did a great job of making sure that was happening. Not to mention, Captain Shrimps, I think somewhere in here had burnt the Scattered Lead, because he didn't stop the ultimate right here, had a couple of opportunities. They did a good job playing defensively around it, and look at the burst that he puts around the bottom side of the fight. It looks like one Scatter of the Week could have made so much difference. As Moose Hater, he burnt the solo ultimate onto Trevor. If he had found that kill or used this right here instead, I mean, come on, 3 kills easily getting delivered into his pocket. Not to mention, I think he thought he killed Aaron and then didn't. Was able to at least get the one, couldn't throw the rock at the end, but Moose Hater almost taken over that fight himself once again. The Gnar having some solid impact. The result of everything else is, you know, they have to throw down the Rift Herald. They're competing for the Dragon. Ginger Turmeric don't want to give a single objective back in this game.
Ultimates all already back up. That bullet time, just a second or two before getting off cooldown. So everything is accessible and available for both of these teams. we saw what an impact some of these wombo combos can make. There's finally a scout of the week. It's going to land onto Rosethorn there. The traps get laid down a little bit prematurely. They're not going to lock anybody away. The zap misses, but it's Ginger Turmeric who are on this dragon. It attempts to reset. They catch it in the pit, though. Now Town on the backside looking to potentially make a move. There is the encore, but Moose Hater makes the dive towards the backside. The Crescent Guard in response, it won't be enough. The kill ends up going over to Captain Shrimps with the unleashed power. Now Captain Shrimps is trying to get on the run here away from Draco. It's another scout of the week. Draco able to pick that one up, and now Aaron is the target. Deep Lord able to do a lot of damage. There's the Gale Force forward to take another member down, and now it's only Trevor on the run, who likely will not be able to escape from this one as the Abyssal Dive comes through, and it's a triple kill going over to Deep Lord.
And look at that. Ginger Turmeric, they don't play patiently in this game. They don't say, oh yeah, we can continue collecting minions, we can continue scaling. They say, we are going to fight now. We're going to prevent the Rift Herald from going to you. We're going to prevent the third dragon from going to you. And it works out both times. The fight around the Rift Herald ended up being one kill in the favor of CLG, which I think they take all day. And this one is so heavily in their favor, ends up being so many kills, and especially 3 onto the Jinx is the big one. And there's a ton of moving parts to this as well. Once again, committing to the dragon because CLG, I don't think they want to attack. They're not playing for necessarily the fight. They're kind of playing on a defensive. It feels like they were lacking commitment to one play or another as everything else comes through. And I love Moose Hater's position here too, because again, you see Town on the other side of the pit. He immediately challenges that positioning so that there's no follow-up to the encore. And notice also Deep Learning and Duo King both do a good job. Duo King pulls Shrimps out of any danger, and Deep Learning is basically untouched, and it buys so much time here for the rest of the team to just wrap around everything. They go from the back of the dragon pit basically into the river, and they just keep picking people off one by one by one. And Deep Learn played so patiently, waited very, very well, ensuring that he wasn't going to fall into dangerous territory until the rest of his team was in position to set him up for a massive team fight.
A beautiful split to force Aaron and Trevor away. And another unfortunate thing, I don't know if you've seen, not a single bullet time has actually gone the distance. It has had to be canceled every single time. Draco attempting to catch someone out with that ultimate. It does not land. One of my least favorite ultimates in the game. It feels so lackluster, I'm not going to lie. It's incredibly easy to miss, and we saw just right there how that comes through. In the meantime, Moose Hater down on the bottom side, maybe waiting for someone to try to push out this bottom lane so he can do another solo bolo like you were talking about earlier, Rebel.
He's waiting for Draco to show up, and that's not good. He also has the coverage from Shrimps, who it looks like, I'm assuming that they're going to anticipate that Shrimps is going to be walking into bot lane, and when they see him, I wonder if Draco comes up with the idea of potentially going for it. As top side, there's a lot more punishment.
There it is. The bullet time finally comes out, but it's canceled by Keel's Crescent Guard. Now, Town looking to make something happen, does have the ultimate available. It's going to be a big shutdown, though, from Aaron, who has to use the heal to stay alive and stay in this fight. Now CLG trying to track down GTC. Nice little scat of the week. That sends Draco running.
Okay, they're going to beeline to Baron immediately because they still have a couple of ultimates to work with. They've got the Seraphine ultimate just as fast as possible, as well as Draco's ultimate, and even the Enchanted Crystal Arrow from base is a very real option. And the worst part of this, Moose Hater's almost out of Meganar. They have to find a way to do something, because if he goes into mini, I don't know that they can actually contest this all that well. That's the Enchanted Crystal Arrow.
There it is, the encore to follow it up. It's a big shutdown going over to Draco, who's able to use his ultimate once again. Moose Hater now looking for the initiation. It's a flashback from Town. No Baron, but still a kill for CLG Faith.
Yeah, they full pulled off the Baron for specifically this one kill, which I don't know if is worth it. Now, he might get more with Captain Shrimps going down as well.
That is a big one. Duo King, the next target here. Not even enough damage to take Draco down. In the meantime, Moose Hater is on the backside of this fight. Draco managed to pick himself up a double kill. Moose Hater almost in mega form. He's going to be able to ult 2 members into the backside here. Seraphine does have the Echo up and available. Moose Hater taking too much damage. Just Rosethorn that picks that one up with a Heartbreaker. And now, finally, CLG Faith are going to be able to make a move onto this Baron.
Just trickling in one by one, but Keel's going to have the Crescent Guard back up, and he's going to be able to get into the pit. They're going to have to maybe bail on this one as well. There's a good amount of healing that's still available here from the side of CLG, which is why their health bars have gotten a lot bigger. Deep Learn being here as well means there is some semblance of a team fight with just the 2 members, as long as Keel isn't under any threat, and they have to leave. Goodness gracious, and another bolt time goes by the wayside. No more Enchanted Crystal Arrow. CLG, they got like the trickle in, they got the Stormtroopering from Ginger Turmeric to give them a couple of kills, but ultimately they don't get the big objective they were looking for.
Nope, and it was 3 members too, just not quite enough damage that CLG Faith was looking for on that one. And all you need is the presence of Heal and Deep Learn to actually send these members away from this objective. They're just dealing too much damage, they're taking too much aggression, and they're manipulating the positioning and movement of CLG Faith around the map just far too much for them to stay committed to any of these plays unless they are 100% certain they're going to be able to take it, which in that instance, you can't be.
I can respect the fact that CLG are taking a bit more of a cautious approach. They aren't ahead in gold at all. Even after the early game that they had, they aren't really convinced that they are capable of winning a fight, especially when their ultimates are just not tagging as well as they need to be. And so they're pulling off objectives where they don't believe the fight is going to go in their favor. They don't want to hold this game over. That's going to be an ultimate. That's multiple ultimates. Burns on the Deep Learn, who doesn't actually take any of them. Has multiple members here.
All right, there's the encore one more time. Rosethorn looking for the initiation. The Heartbreak is going to be used to get out of the fight. Moose Hater on the backside, trying to extend this one on to Trevor and Aaron. His ultimate is down now. He's been rooted. He's going to be a little gnar very soon. The bullet time comes out and once again has to be ended early on. Rosethorn managing to pick up the one, but in the meantime, Heel takes downtown. Draco has been removed from the fight. Trevor and Aaron are too low to initiate on this one, and that means the rest of Ginger Turmeric is able to just go into the backside and fight under tower. Moose Hater barely getting out with a sliver of health and avoiding the volley coming through out of Trevor. Once again, avoiding the volley. He's going to be able to recall here. Deep Learn still wants to continue this fight. Flashing forward. Trevor with the lockdown. No, that means that Aaron is going to be able to pick up the one. Captain Shrimps finds the second, but it's a double kill for Aaron before he goes down.
But grand scheme of things, once again, it's going to be a dragon going over to the side of Ginger Turmeric, and it's another mid tower going to the side of Ginger Turmeric, who've now turned a 3,000 gold advantage in this game, Jolly. How? How do they do this 2 games in a row when they go down so quickly? First off, I want to give props to Moose Hater, who has been spectacular all game. This fight specifically was just so good because he disrupts the entire backline. Make sure they can't. Look at this. Duo King and Keel both in bad phase. Look at Aaron. Look at Trevor. Both of them the ADCs, both pushed out, both under half health just because of the Gnar. It buys so much more time for this fight to turn out well for the side of AGT. They get to pick their moments. They get to find their straights. And eventually it's multiple members going down on the front end. All of CLG is kind of scattered in way too big of an area to work with as Ginger Turmeric just continue to flood forward. This was a bit of an extension, right? After the kill, it feels like maybe they could have walked out here, but they just commit to the bit and just go a little bit further. It does net them 2 more kills because they do kill Aaron and Trevor, but I feel like they could have easily just walked back into mid lane and not worried about this. Instead, they go for it. This is the Ginger Turmeric that we know and we love, right? Like they're a little too feisty sometimes, but it does at least get them a little bit more gold as they've taken control of the game.
Yeah. Another dragon down as well. So it's 2-2 across the board. Ginger Turmeric really tying things up. And you know what? I feel like you cursed it, Rebel. As soon as CLG Faith started this game out well, you're like, well, this is just how game number 1 started, isn't it? And it really is the honest truth that Ginger Turmeric has just been able to turn things around once it gets to this team fight stage. Here might be another chance. It is CLG Faith trying to look for one of these picks as they have the members of AOE Ginger Turmeric kind of separated across here in the river. But there's too much mobility. Moose Hater, very close to hitting Mega Gnar, has the capacity to jump in and use that Gnar ultimate if he needs to. Now it's Rosethorn making some risky plays.
Actually really good. I love that from Rosethorn because, again, you pop the Gnar ultimate, or you pop the Gnar passive. You have to go into Mega, and now he's not going to have it. So if they get the push on this wave, they could potentially threaten into Baron buff pit. I don't think they're going to, just because, again, they're a little bit fearful at the moment. They're playing a little bit fearful, trying to figure out doubling back. They're trying to figure out what they want to do in this game. They want to figure out what their next play is going to be because they've got these massive ultimates and really have not been able to connect them the way that they wanted to at all in this game for CLG Faith. This, to me, is where I think Rosethorn can really shine. He's the one with the experience. He's the one that's been there and done that in a number of places inside of Academy. He was top 3 in Proving Grounds just last year. So if Rosethorn is going to step up and be a big leader for this team, this is one of those moments. If he can call his shot and help his team figure out when and where to fight and win this game, potentially take them to a game-winning series here to push them into a different place, push them into playoffs, it would be massive for their confidence walking into Proving Grounds.
Speaking of their confidence, they are definitely feeling it here. CLG Faith looking a little bit rocky. They want to try to start one of these fights proactively, and that is going to be the ultimate coming out of Draco. They're not going to get the stun off on the 1, the encore onto 3 separate members. It's a lot of damage coming out of Rosethorn. CLG Faith already has to back away from this one because, as you can see towards the bottom side of the map, Moose Hater is breaking into the base.
Yeah, little pest on the bottom side of the map here, and a dinosaur suit is making their lives a living hell at the moment because he has a lot of AD and he is making it difficult for them to be able to push in. And right there was a good example of the fact that they have a bunch of really useful ultimates, but like they didn't tag any of them necessarily. They didn't tag the right members. The Encore was big, but also Keel was the only one in range of taking damage. He presses Crescent Guard, and no one can actually do damage against him. Like, it just didn't happen. Their ultimates have to be used properly here. Otherwise, the fight is not going to have the same impact they want. And we've seen time and time again where CLG Faith, they go for the ultimates, they end up getting basically nothing for them, and the fight afterwards is won by Ginger Turmeric. They have to find pay dirt at some point, or else this composition goes to the wayside.
Yeah, and it feels like maybe they're being a little too proactive. Maybe they're trying to force proactive plays out that Ginger Turmeric is just able to very easily react to. That's kind of what it feels like, because a lot of these fights are started with CLG Faith attempting to find a pinch onto a solo member, attempting to get Deep Learn or Captain Shrimps away from the rest of everyone, but it doesn't matter because, again, the mobility from Ginger Turmeric is just too much. They're so fast, they're so quick to respond and react to everything that's going on. And CLG Faith needs to know at this point that even though it's not a massive gold lead, there's still quite a large advantage in terms of items and experience that Ginger Turmeric has over CLG Faith, and they can't be taking these seemingly equal 5v5 fights anymore.
Okay. We get scrappiness potentially looming on the bottom side. Of course, Draco's not going to take the potential play up against Moose Hater, who's just going to dump abilities into the wave, get the stack up of the Rage Bar, and then it's going to be at the potential of taking a teleport into the top side for the Baron play, if that were to come through. It's not the fastest of all Barons, especially with Gnar on the other side of the map from the side of Ginger Turmeric, so they have to commit very heavily to the big, because they don't want to put themselves in a position where they are potentially at risk of taking a bunch of ultimates. Right here, Cleanse, or actually it's QSS used by Captain Shrimps to make sure that he doesn't go down, but that's more fishing with the ultimates from CLG to try to find something, but does not stick.
And consider, too, I mean, Captain Shrimps adapting very well. I was talking about how it's tough for Syndra if you fall back in the early parts of the game, which was the case, 0-2-0, I think, for Captain Shrimps early on, has actually been able to find the recovery here. Now it's CLG Faith once again kind of looking for a fight, but Moose Hater is elsewhere on the map, working on objectives, working on getting pressure. Vision is there now for CLG Faith. Of course, Moose Hater is aware, but it still gives Ginger Turmeric the opportunity to try to make a pinch play on all 5 members. That, for CLG Faith, maybe trying to once again start these fights with the members of GTC separated out, but it has not worked in the past. It's still going to be Keel who manages to pick up that dragon, and now it's CLG Faith sort of on the run. No, actually, they want to initiate on this one with Moose Hater. He's going to get 3 members ulted. Same thing with Keel, who flashes in and throws down the Crescent Guard. Finally, Aaron is able to find a huge ulti himself. It's a nice echoed beat drop coming out of town to guarantee a lockdown, a triple kill, a quadra kill going over to Aaron, and what a turnaround from CLG Faith.
And it's finally a circumstance that I've been waiting for, and I've been waiting for CLG to take advantage of it, which is the fact that when Ginger Turmeric make an aggressive move, when they're the ones that are initiating with some sort of big thing, and if you get a proper lineup of multiple members, it is really easy to win the fight, because that's when your tools are going to be the easiest to hit. That's when your big abilities are going to make the most difference. Here, AGT, they're like kind of fishing for a fight, which is weird, because they could have stepped out. Moose Hater's in an amazing position. Watch his angle, too, because he nearly gets all of them. If it weren't for the flash from Aaron, feels like that would have been a 4-man Gnar ultimate into the wall that could have just won the game. And Deep Learn tries to put in damage. Draco does a good job of pushing him off, but like we said, it is an amazing counter ultimate from the MF right here to just put so much damage into these members on the side of Ginger Turmeric, killing off multiple, dropping so many so low before anything comes through. And again, to me, a large part of it was like Deep Learn. If he was a little bit further back in the fight, maybe could have stepped up, put in damage to Aaron, prevented him from really having that impactful of an ultimate, but catching the engagement and turning it around on CLG Faith to equalize the goal.
And it's not over. This is Aaron, who's sitting at 10-2-5, someone that everyone who is a fan of CLG Faith is constantly singing the praises of. And let's take a look at that gold lead over time. It was pretty consistent, getting closer and closer to 5,000 in favor of Ginger Turmeric, and now it is back to almost nothing, as we can see just a couple hundred separating these 2 members now that this Baron buff has been picked up. A big stun there onto Shrimps. It's a trade-off. Trevor ends up going down. The bullet time coming out once again from Aaron. The lock-in comes through Rosethorn, having to use the Heartbreaker to get out of this fight one more time.
Moose Haters on the bottom side of the map. They've got Baron buff, but with that one death and with this slime lane split push, it seems like they're not going to be able to take full advantage. Keel not going to take the encore either. Instead, Aaron and Town are still here. They're going to siege up as best they can. They don't have the greatest away clear. Deeplearn's got to do it, mostly himself. But Moose Hater on the other side of the map is trying to be a menace. Is actually putting some damage into Draco and into the bottom inhibitor. As Rosethorn, once again, also having an impact, pushing that top lane at the same time with this Baron buff. His mid inhibitor tower is going to be cracked.
Moose Hater not quite able to actually get that bottom inhibitor. Still a pretty solid trade. He's okay with taking the fights against Draco. We've seen it in the past, though the levels are now equaled out. There's still another minute left on this buff, so they're trying to get as much pressure as possible here for CLG in the mid side, but I think that's the most they can take. Clear out the enemy jungle, put some pressure towards mid, put some pressure towards top here, and look at this. Draco gonna walk right past Moose Hater, who decides to back there in that bush.
Okay, Rosethorn taking a ridiculous amount of damage on the back end of that one from the Leander's of Captain Stream, but it's not going to do quite enough to take down his health bar and get him the kill. But that should thwart the remaining push coming out from CLG Faith, who recapture another 2,000 gold advantage somehow in this game, bouncing back and forth between the two teams. It gives the advantage back to advantage, back to advantage. At this point, again, it's big ultimates that are necessary from CLG Faith to really take fights. I feel like if it's not big ultimates being tagged, then Ginger Turmeric are the ones at the advantage, even with a gold deficit. But CLG Faith may have cracked the code. They might have figured it out. As long as Ginger Turmeric are making the aggressive move, they can set themselves up for a place where they can find better success with the MF ultimate, with the Encore, all these big cooldowns that are going to be so influential. We'll see if they pick up on that as...
Nice little enchanted crystal arrow there onto Trevor. Meanwhile, the fight's taking place in the mid lane. Duo King taking so much damage, and that's what happens when you got a 12-2 Misfortune here, who is, I think, all but one item from being fully built at this point, 35 minutes into the game. There we go. Look at that. One item left to build up. So you're feeling pretty good as Aaron, but again, the longer this game goes on, after you have full built on Misfortune, there's not really anywhere else you can go.
Okay, let's see how this bid inhibitor, it should fall. Dragon's going to be available as well. I think they just find that this is free.
Oh my gosh, Draco's going to be able to flash forward and pick that one up, or sorry, ignite forward with that. Now Moose Hater, Deep Learn, not even going to be on the chase for this one. Keel is in the wings, but there's too much crowd control, too much damage coming out of these three members of CLG Faith that they're fighting, and Town is also in the wings.
Pushing for the mid inhibitor now, it is going to be mid for bot lane, and I think that ends up being more valuable for Ginger Turmeric. If they can work their way into the river, they actually might contest this dragon just to try to get the soul point and potentially get a game-winning fight here. Because they all have their big damage dealer, Hughes Keel.
Maybe the chance for that Seraphine ultimate to come through. There it is. It's only going to hit one member, and they're focusing on Duo King, the Enchanted Crystal Arrow, landing onto Deep Learn, who should be far enough away to get out. Trevor maybe on the run, throws a hawk shot just to be sure, but it's not enough. That dragon will go down still to GTC. Keel able to come back into the fight. Duo King not the target anymore because Deep Learn is on the run. He is excited, though. Trevor's going to be able to take down the one. Draco still on the run, and now the teleport comes through from Captain Shrimps. He's still got home guards. Might be able to hit this scat of the week if Draco doesn't get far enough ahead, but not likely that Draco's going to be able to escape from this fight anyways. He's engaging into the enemy tower here. They do have mid lane locked down, but it's going to be another pickup, another kill going over to Keel.
Unbelievable, the back and forth between this game right now, between Ginger Turmeric and CLG Faith, because CLG Faith, they turn away from mid inhibitor with their most powerful member down, and they go for the dragon. They allow Ginger Turmeric to walk in relatively for free, and they end up just like leaving Keel in the pit. They try to turn on to other members kite backwards from the pit, and it yields Dragon Soul, which is a cloud soul. It's a lot of move speed to work with, a lot of ways to dodge ultimates on the side of Ginger Turmeric is one of these necessary things to making sure their composition is going to work. And Baron's going to be up here in only about 30 seconds or so. A back's going to come out from Keel. He has got the movement speed to get back out onto the map. But it just feels like every team fight is just rearing us up for one really big one that's going to end up being just the deciding factor of this game. We're split apart by a couple hundred gold. These teams are about as even as it can get. That Cloud Soul really is the one benefit that Ginger Turmeric have collected in this game.
Yeah, it's been a teeter-totter. It's been a seesaw in terms of watching this gold dip and dive between both of these teams. It's barely a lead now from Ginger Turmeric, and there is that Baron spawn. However, movement speed in favor of GTC. As you said, they've got 4 Cloud Dragons under their belt, as well as the Soul on top of it. Heal once again, just gonna wait for CLG to try to knock this Baron down as low as possible, and then the initiation from Ginger Turmeric is going to come in. They're not taking any damage. They need to make a move now, but it ends up being Faith who takes down the Baron with no opposition. The ultimate coming out of Moose Hater, but he gets locked down. The Encore as well as the bullet time on top of each other are too much. The Enchanted Crystal Arrow actually is going to land. I thought that completely missed. That means the fight can still happen because it's on to Deepler, and with Ginger Turmeric has to protect this ADC. The volley, not going to hit. The Q, not going to hit. Town looking to extend this one out, but CLG Faith has to stay together. There's no dragon opportunity up for them, so they're just going to push back into the mid lane.
They got a back right now, but it's going to be an absolutely pesky combination of ADCs, or at least one ADC that's going to be making sure that they are pestered into staying on the map longer than they really, really want to. It's only just now are they getting back to be able to defend the base. They're going to lose one tower. Yeah, easily.
Oh, nice Enchanted Crystal Arrow that gives Draco a free kill. Not just that, but it ends up being the second tower that goes down. A beautiful encore from Town, securing another kill, and that means that we are going to a game number 3, Rebel Fox, as CLG Faith take the second.
I don't think that this game could have turned out in any way that was going to be less satisfying than taking us to a game number 3. Like, there's absolutely no reason that this shouldn't, given how close that this game and then especially the first game were as well. As it's CLG end up hitting big ultimates, although I feel like the last fight was decided by just that jump in from Moose Hater that kind of, again, fell like just short of his expectations. He was halfway to where he needed to be for that ultimate to hit all 5 members, but he didn't even hit a single person with it. And there were a couple of those like brain fart type moments there for the side of Ginger Turmeric that I'm hoping don't affect them mentally coming into this last game, because CLG, they stayed resilient. They were in some really tough positions themselves as well. They almost gave this game right back to Ginger Turmeric, but staying relevant, staying focused, staying in place, and making sure to keep themselves on the design of making sure that they are competitive in this series, on the design of winning this one out and continuing further in this second proving grounds.
And now the question comes back up again. What does the tiltability look like for the side of Ginger Turmeric? They're kind of known to be one of those tilty teams, but with seeding on the line, having already secured themselves a top 10 place for both of these teams, then at this point, it's also just kind of bragging rights, right? Flashy points you're able to put up for yourself. You know what? Let's check in with the desk, though, because we have a whole nother game to cast after this, Rebel.